Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you very much for taking the time to join this webinar today. We're all here to talk to you about the CIOB project that is now in implementation phase. So let's get up straight away and get on with the presentation. In a minute, we'll get to see the agenda. In a minute, we'll see the agenda. But before that, let me introduce the two other co-sponsors doing this presentation today. We've got Amy Goff and Alan Crane.
Morning.
Morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are.
Okay, where are you guys at the moment?
We're in Dublin.
In Dublin, I'm in Bracknell. Okay. Anyway, this is what we're going to cover today. Our agenda, and we'd like to talk about where the project came from, what we've learned from members when we talk to them, and what CIOB will deliver, because that at the end of the day is a crucial thing. And I'm sure you've joined the webinar because you want to find out what it means to you in particular. Hopefully you've all watched the 5-minute film that captures our vision for the CIOB. This is a great introduction, I think, with I think some key messaging for you to listen ahead of the presentation. If you haven't seen the presentation, I would still encourage you to go and have a look at the video, even after after you've watched, taken part in the webinar. It is worth watching, and it's worth going back time and time again, actually, just to remind yourself what we were coming back to, what we're about. Anyway, throughout this presentation, you can send questions if you have a Google account, so hopefully you've all registered on that. And after the presentation, your questions will be answered. You'll need to click on the box with 9 squares, top left, if you'd like to ask a question. So, okay. So let's go back to the beginning, and what was our starting point? Well, this project started with a concern, and that was that we weren't engaging with our members on a local level in a way that they wanted us to. And that concern started 2 years of research and consultation with members and staff. I have to say, in all my time at the CIOB, this is by far the largest of the strategic projects we've ever undertaken. And it's been the most consulted on change we've ever proposed. And it's involved the whole of the Institute. Now, what was really important with the CIOB is actually making sure that what comes out of the work is aligned to the corporate plan. There's no point what's happening at local level going off in a different direction to where the Institute as a whole is trying to get to. So it's very, very important that we made sure that we were aligned. Once the CIOB has to play a part in the influencing of people around the Institute. It has to play a part in the growth of the Institute, and be very critical in actually making sure that we future-proof our Institute and that it's able to provide value to the industry going forward. Critical to that, I think, is getting more people into the Institute, particularly younger people who've got a longer time to spend in the Institute and the industry. So the need to be relevant to the industry is paramount. And alongside of that, that is tied in with recognition both at Institute level, Institute at qualification level, and also I think recognition at competence level as well. And I think there's a number of levels of recognition. We just don't talk about recognition as a one-dimensional thing. We've also got the Academy coming on stream, and is also training as well. So an awful lot there that we needed to sort of ensure that CIOB plays its part of delivering those broader corporate objectives. Now, we're fortunate to have a working group, all active members, which included past presidents, trustee, branch chairs, a Novus representative, and a UK and Ireland time zone chair, particularly as that is one of the biggest time zones. And I think our working group were committed to making sure they consulted thoroughly to all members from the outset. Once plans were proposed, making sure we communicate those changes widely and transparently, which of course is why we're here today, part of the process. Now, this project, up to earlier this year, has had a degree of confidence around it due to the sensitivities surrounding our regional staff, and anybody who's had responsibility for managing staff will clearly understand that there are proper processes you have to go through, and certainly from my point of view and from the trustees' point of view, we've been very circumspect in actually trying to mitigate risk for the institute, because the last thing we need to do was have a whole lot of cost associated with this, which was totally unavoidable, and end up giving ourselves some major staff problems. So I think bear in mind that one of the reasons why there was an element of confidentiality around it, you will understand that. Anyway, I'm going to move over now onto how we consulted, and Amy's going to pick that up and lead you through the research we did. Amy.
Thank you. Can I just, Chris and Amy, that you can actually hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so hi everyone. The next few slides, I'm going to talk to you about the independent research that was conducted and give you some headline stats and figures about what we found out from that research. The working group, right from the start, so as Chris said about 2 years ago, they were adamant that the research that we were going to do and the consultation as part of this project was going to be independent. It wasn't going to be a CIOB research survey. It was going to be using a professional membership research consultancy called Ashridge Communications. They're an expert in their field, and we've been using them throughout this the research phase. Now, the consultation, it took a variety of forms over the last 2 years. We had 3 full member surveys that went out to everybody. So that survey was created by Ashridge. It was approved and tweaked by the working group, and then it was sent out to every single member. So every member had the opportunity to respond to the questions and the proposals put through to them 3 times. The consultation also took form of one-to-ones and meetings with our time zone level using our branch representatives. So again, it was another form of consultation. Members Forum, the top level of sort of the branch network and our governance structure that informs and is a sounding board for trustees. We consulted with Members Forum 2 times. And then there were separate one-to-ones with the Irish branch and the Wales branch on their request. So we took note of that. We also consulted with our staff, felt it was really important that we needed to learn and hear from the staff difficulties over the years. We've got a lot of experience in our regional staff. So we had to talk to them. They gave us their feedback, and this was global, not just in the UK and Ireland. They provided a SWOT analysis for us by branch, which was really useful. It gave us details on event data, who attends, and how often. It gave us information on hours worked by activity. And what we found really there, and it was really useful, was that a lot of hours were shown supporting the local committee and not really having time to really focus on the outcomes and the goals and objectives that would benefit the Institute. So what we have here is some real top-line findings from the research. Now, the research report, the full report, is about 100 pages long. So we couldn't obviously put that into this presentation, but we can condense it down into these headline findings. And you can see there that there's certainly room for improvement in terms of our representation, our CPD support for members, and how we deliver events. So just picking out a couple of those points on the slide, you can read it for yourselves, but only 48% felt that their branches effectively represents them. So that was something that we can certainly improve on going forward, and we'll talk about that more in the presentation. 84% would like officer roles to be elected. The only people that are elected into the Institute currently are trustees. So again, we'll talk about that later in the presentation, but we're going to introduce some local elections. 42% consider joining their local committee. So these are people that we never seen before. And certainly a main objective of this project is to better engage with the wider membership. Next slide, please, Amy. So the next two slides here, what Ashridge did was benchmarked our organisation, so you can see down that third column of stats, against two other organisations, A and B. We don't know who those other organisations are. They were confidential, and Ashridge would not let us know who they were, and that's absolutely fine. But I think we can guess. They're a similar size professional bodies to us, so I think you could probably guess. But looking at that around the red box, you've got 74% of members, of our members, not attending events and meetings. And that's really high when compared to those other two. So on its own, it might look quite good, but when you compare them, there's some improvement that we can make. And then further benchmarking there, again, 74%, there's just a coincidence that it's the same figure, but 74% again on its own could look quite good. But then when put against the other two organisations, really low on what members, whether they would recommend us. Again, so a lot of areas where we can improve what we need to do. And over to you, Alan.
Thanks, Amy. So what clearly came out of the Ashridge report, and I stress the report, the findings, the feedback from that initial survey was presented by Ashridge, as Amy says, extensively, over 100 pages. And what was very clear was that our current model, and yes, it varied in different parts of the world, but the current model just simply wasn't engaging with the majority of our members, in fact, not all our members, the majority. And that was portrayed in a number of ways. The broad areas were people weren't going to meetings because either they were inaccessible or they had sampled and found that what was being presented at meetings and so forth was not really relevant to them. And certainly didn't provide the level of support wherever they are that they needed. And very quickly, our mantra, if you like, the mantra of our working group became the message that what the CIOB has got to be about, and if you like, this is the mantra of one CIOB, is providing high quality services and information for all of our members, wherever they are physically, whatever stage they're at in their careers, and whatever their ambitions are in terms of progression. And whilst we deliver some good stuff, there was too much which was felt to be poor quality, too localised in some cases, not sufficiently local in other cases. There's a whole range of responses. It was a really deep research programme. The other thing which became clear was that there was confusion between the administration of the Institute and member activities. And that was one of the emphases that led us to what I'm going to come to in a minute, which is the ongoing structure. And another aspect, which was not new to a number of us anyway, was that we needed much stronger member, employer, external engagement in order to grow the Institute. As Chris said earlier on, the Institute's been flatlining for a while. Yes, in many parts of the world, we've been in recessionary times, but we've still been flatlining. In fact, the age profile of the Institute has become increasingly concerning because most years in the last decade is simply the age profile by almost a year in a year, which says we're not bringing in fresh blood. So that led us as a working group then to take those recommendations from Ashridge and try and evolve, propose, put forward a structure which would provide that access, provide those services and help improve those services to people wherever they are. And we very quickly formulated around local and regional hubs. And this structure was developed, it was put through the discussions with the time zone representatives, it was put to the members in July of last year, together with 16 other recommendations. So there's a list of 18 recommendations which came out of the research, the work of the working group based upon that. And broadly speaking, the members forum agreed with 16 of those 18 recommendations. We then put the whole thing to the Board of Trustees that week. The Board of Trustees agreed and approved and adopted 16, but asked us to re-look at the detail related to local and regional hubs, which we did. We asked Ian Brandt to join the working group so that we had a constant from one of the time zones in our further deliberations. We tweaked, we modified, we made some adjustments to the proposals, and then took those out to the whole membership again in October of last year with that final model of local and regional hubs. And this slide shows also 3 questions, which Ashley set the questions to be asked of the members. There's no slant to those questions. 71% agree that the model we're proposing will improve delivery of services, delivery of support, delivery of things like CPD. Sorry, our computer's mobile. 60% agreed it would be more representative and would give them, and 2/3 felt it would give them as members better opportunity to engage with the CIOB. Whether that engagement was as simple as members expressing their needs and feeling their needs, or engaging further by becoming more active within the Institute. There were some who neither agreed or disagreed, who sat on the fence, as you always get. But significantly, only 10% of the respondents disagreed either strongly or just simply disagreed with the proposal. Only 10%. And it is a simple fact that to a person, that 10% were people who felt their positions as chairs or officers of branches and centres were threatened by the proposal. So we arrived at a model which, as I say, the mantra, the reasoning, the logic behind it is we want all of our members to be able to access the same high quality, relevant products, services, events, and CPD wherever they are, and at whatever their career stage is. And the importance of that in itself is obvious, but further, if we are to get the recognition as an institute that we need and our members need, then we've got to be able to display competence in what we do. Competence is measured at the moment simply when people qualify for the first time, whether that's qualified through their degree process or qualified to become members. But it's absolutely essential that that competence is maintained such that as they develop in their career, that competence matches the jobs, the roles, and the aspirations. So next slide, please, Amy. So what have we got? We've got a new local administrative and member structure. The local hubs and the regional hubs essentially are administration centres. Administration centres which will ensure with improved, enlarged staffing resources, a more consistent approach to delivery of local events, CPD, news, information, communications, and ensure that the right venues, the right equipment, the right methods, the right media are available to deliver CPD products and services. There will be, because of the improved, developed staffing and equipment, modern communications equipment, there will be significant changes to the communication system. And a lot of this has actually already been started, is in place. CPD portal has been significantly improved. But it will give the opportunity also for us to engage with those who've been providing good quality information and CPD, for example, updates in the past, which have never been captured, have never been quality improved, and never been made available for the wider membership. And not above all, but significantly, coming back to this point about local engagement. When I chaired the what was the education board, was vice president and then president, wherever I went in the world, there was one common concern, if not complaint, from our members. And that was that being a member, a chartered member of CIOB, did not enjoy the same recognition from employers or government bodies or education providers compared with some other institutions. And this new structure is very clearly aimed at ensuring we put in place the resources and the skills and expertise to back up our members in taking forward that local engagement and recognition that we all so earnestly have wanted and required over the years. So what's in it for members? We believe in better representation. Your committee members will be elected by you. And Amy will, when I hand back to Amy, she'll talk you through how we're going to do that, how those committees will be formed and so forth. Means that by having a clear hub, a clear reference point, that products, services, support, whether that's face-to-face, whether it's online, whether it's recorded events, whether it's things you can go in and just pour out yourself, will be more accessible to all members right across the globe. There'll be better core CPD. We're employing improved copywriters. We're improving a quality improvement system. We will put your ideas on CPD requirement and produce those for you, or aid the production of you doing things locally. And the communications, and this has already started, will be more relevant. One of the complaints has been that everyone, and I get this the same as everybody else, everyone gets bombarded with umpteen emails a month. There's no differentiation in the headline, and you don't know what the particular relevance is. So we're breaking down the news communication system into local, regional, and national and international. So that as soon as you see it, you can click on it and see whether it's particularly relevant to you or whether it's just of general interest. And again, I stress the Institute, on your behalf, building recognition and engaging with employers, education, and so on. So, of course, if we don't achieve these things, we need that new structure to deliver a clearly more accessible member experience. And one of the first steps is to put in place those new local regional hubs that will help us deliver that. Next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. I'm not sure how many of you can see the detail of this, but essentially the first thing to convey is that there is in our current structure, we have 4 tiers in the member engagement sequence. We've condensed that down to 3. So you have local hubs in green or yellow, depending on your colour perspective, which essentially are hubs based around 3 factors. First, the number of members in a geographic location, and for example, in the main item, we've used postcodes to determine that. The second is the growth plan, and as was said right at the start, what was significant is when the working group was deliberating on what we needed to do to achieve the aims that came out of the research, there were other groups looking at growth of the Institute, whether the members' forum structure was still relevant, and coincidentally, it was pure coincidence, but all those organizations were coming up with similar proposals. And that was that the administration focus, the member support focus, also had to be clearly aligned with the growth strategy of the Institute. And that, as I'm sure some of you will have read in the information that's been sent out about the corporate plan, also has, in a sense, a city focus. That's where the easier win should be available in terms of growth. So local hubs, then representatives from those local hub committees at a regional hub level, and those regional hubs then feeding their representation, your representation, into the members' forum. And all of it on an electable basis. And in addition, there is an informal link also going to be provided to each regional hub. One of the Board of Trustee members, not the officers, one of the Board of Trustees will each be asked to form an informal link to each regional hub. Now, there is no doubt whatsoever that the allocation of those hubs in terms of geography and so forth will change. It's a structure which needs to be flexible anyway to reflect the changes in the demographics of the Institute, growth and so forth and so on, but it's a first shot. And in fact, over the last couple of months, that diagram has changed a couple of times already. It's changed in respect of the hubs in Ireland, for example, following representation that they made, and it's changed in Oceania or Australia in terms of the hub locations there. And it will continue to evolve. It definitely will not be right first time around. Going into a little bit more detail about the hub process and structure, and this is a complex diagram. The first point is its kick-off point in providing those services to members would be for the committee to put together a business plan for events and other activities and developing core events over a 12-month rolling program for delivery on a local basis. And hopefully there will be a continuum, and Amy will talk about this in one respect, there'll be a continuum between those people who have been responsible thus far in the old structure for that, to ensure consistency, but to help improve the quality that the research shows our members really want. And there'll be a mechanism in there for measuring that quality and reporting on successes, and using those successes to inform, for example, the delivery of CCD and the formats next, please, and how to make that content not only available on the CPD portal, but not only in terms of how the different methods that we can use to deliver that, but how we can capture the feedback from members in order to improve that quality. I've talked about twice already the hub impact perspective in terms of promoting CIOB, engagement with employers and education and government, but getting that local support is essential in taking that forward, in the same way as it's essential in delivering CPD that's fit for purpose in the location where you are. The hub will play a significant role, of course, in supporting members in communication terms. I've talked about the separation of newsletters and how that will make them more accessible and more readable. And then, of course, there is the significant area of identifying local event preferences, using insight from that member engagement. Next bullet point, please, Amy, to inform the development. And also the consultation process will continue. We will, from here on in, carry out member-wide surveys on an annual basis. Every member is contacted, and we'll use the feedback, the insight gained from that to further improve and hopefully grow and develop the model that we put forward. At that point, I'm going to hand over to Amy, who's going to take you through some detail on how those new committees at hub levels are going to work.
Yeah, so everyone, we've heard about the why, we've heard about what. Now it's time really to see who's actually going to deliver all of this. It's on a massive scale. Don't underestimate the fact that this is not just about a restructure. This is a far bigger project than that. So starting at the top then, in terms of governance for the hub committees, we are in the development phase right now of creating some hub regulations. And these will be used around the governance for those local, regional and members forum committees and groups. What we don't have right now is, and we are just interpreting as people see fit. And that's really having an inconsistency around the world. So we're trying to bring things consistent with how governance committees work under the. So the type of things that those regulations include around tenure that you'll be on the committee, in terms of composition, and also the assessment. Yes, with some job roles. So we're going to have job description for those committee members. It's something that we haven't had before, but that will then focus them on the roles the Institute requires them to deliver. So that's currently going through approval, and following this webinar, actually, we've got a One CIOB working group conference call to have a look at the regulations, and then in July, they'll hopefully be approved by the trustees. Looking at the establishment for local hub committees then, currently, you don't have to be a chartered member. There's nothing written, there's no rules around who sits on our committees. But what we're saying, and certainly the working group recommended this, that you have to be chartered. And we're saying that a local hub committee will consist of 6 committee members. Now, some parts of the world, and certainly in the UK, there are committees that are possibly 20 plus. And some of those people will not have a specific role. So the working group decided that a committee of 6 would be adequate to deliver what we need them to deliver. And they're also the elections. So if you remember the stats that I talked about earlier, 84% requested elections for their officer roles in their local area. So we're going to deliver online elections, purely online. And that will be within the chartered member region as well. And every local hub will have a boundary around postcodes, as Alan mentioned. There'll be no AGMs required, unless there's laws, and certainly China and South Africa require AGMs. But what we're trying to do now is actually use members' time more wisely, so that they can put on more events, different events, quality events, rather than have a pretty meaningless meeting, really, unless laws require it. Term of office, we're saying that the only official roles out of those 6 committee members will be the chair and the vice chair, and they'll sit for 2 years. There's no need for regalia. Then the working group believe that there is no need to have a badge when you're actively or becoming an active member of the Institute, as we would call it. All other members will sit for 3 years. And an important point here is about co-opting. Yes, it's a small group of members, but what the working group have said is that it's mandatory for Novus to have an official role within that local hub committee. And also, Novus is going to have a mirrored structure of what you've seen today. in terms of that local, regional and members forum level. They'll have a representative on each of those different levels. And it's really important. The Institute recognises that Novus is essential for the development and the involvement of the Institute. So we've created a dedicated role now at head office of a Novus officer, so full-time role that's going to look at and hopefully drive and support that Novus network. But finally on this slide, initially for the local hub committee, we've got to ensure continuity. So what we're looking for first, this might sound a little simple, but it certainly happened very well for the trustees when they had their governance review quite a long time ago now, maybe 8 to 10 years ago. But the chair will sit for 2 years, and then for succession planning, the vice chair will sit for 2 years. Then they move into that chair role after a further 2 years. 2 members will sit for 1 year, and 2 members will sit for 3 years. And what will happen on that first meeting is that the committee members will sit down, each of their group, discuss amongst themselves, and some people might choose to just take the 1 year. Some may prefer to do the 3 years, but if there is any kind of conflict there, then they will just draw straws for those tenures and those terms. It worked well in a previous for the trustees a while ago. And again, there are mentions about the 2 co-opted members. We may well include that actually after the discussions we've had with roadshows that we've been doing for the past few weeks. There's been a lot of conversation around that. So there's food for thought really, and we're keen to listen as we go round.
But it is important that those co-options are for specific purposes.
Absolutely, and for a specific time period as well. It needs to have a benefit behind it. The timings for committees, I'm sure if there's some existing committee members listening to this talk, you'll be interested in that. So what we don't want to do is clash with any trustee. Currently, you've only got elections for trustees, so we don't want to clash with that. So what we're looking at is expressions of interest coming out to chartered members for the Europe region, which is mainly UK and Ireland, in September, October. And a full set of guidelines and the application form will come out with that. So you will see exactly what you are applying for. And that will in turn, in November, December, we'll introduce an induction process for the new committee. And that will be their first meeting, really. So they will decide who's sitting for how many years during that time. And that means that by the 1st of January, they'll be fully ready to deliver their 2017 business plan and budget. Now, overseas, we can't do everything at once. It will just be it would be crazy and impossible almost to deliver. So overseas elections will take place at some point in 2017, and we will communicate directly with them. So final slide, just looking at the resources for all of this. We've got the members side that we just talked about, but then the resourcing has also changed. We're looking to really focus our regional teams. They haven't been in the past, and we need to really focus them on what will make a difference. And that really is on employer engagement for development managers. They will, that's where we're going to see the growth coming through. Properly nurturing engagement relationships with employers. We must improve on that. Certainly the development managers will be looking at recruitment, retention, their territory management, and they'll also be accountable for finance. This is new. They've always had an involvement, but actually the 100% responsibility will be for the member of staff to deliver those budgets. Working closely with the committee, however, there is no need going forward for the role of treasurer. And they'll certainly be working on external engagement. As Alan has said, recognition is really important to gaining growth and raising our profile. And there'll be additional support at head office being introduced for that side of things as well. Reporting to the development managers will be the member services and events coordinators. That's what it is really. We have 500 events globally per year. So it makes sense, utter sense to have a dedicated role focused on that and inequality, improving quality there. There'll also be the first point of contact for local member inquiries. There's a lot of inquiries that come into head office, but there are also a lot of inquiries that need to go out at the local region, and they'll be the first point of contact for that. I think it's important to remember on that final point, the staff do report to head office, not to committees. We certainly have pockets around the world where some of our staff are treated as PAs, really. And what we're doing in terms of focusing those roles, they're no longer, they've increased their skills, and we will be training them and developing them so that they're not at that level anymore. So really empowering that local team to communicate and maintain and work with the committee, the local committee, so that they're updated on the Institute activities and initiatives, and ensuring that the objectives of the Institute are at the forefront of committee's work. Back to you, Chris.
Okay, well, I'm just going to ask the team here whether we've got any questions. Do we have any questions that have come through the... We're just going to go back to that. It's interesting stuff, this technology, isn't it? I'm sorry if you had a few issues on some of the sound quality earlier. We'll take that away and try and improve on that. But anyway, some questions first. Yeah, first one was a comment, and I recognise that there is a bad echo. Yeah, we'll deal with that, and hopefully next time around, the next webinar, we'll have addressed the issues of the echo. We're still trying to get to the hang of how all this works ourselves, and the key part's really just making sure that we're in the right sorts of rooms and have the right sorts of microphones. So please bear with us on that. This webinar will be available on YouTube as well later, so go on that and see if we've addressed some of the issues there. Any more questions, please?
I'll ask the question, Chris. When and where will the hub meet?
Right, Amy, when and where will the hub meet? That's a question.
I think I've got Alan to answer that, actually.
Look, I'll explain in more detail. The hub is an administration centre. Members will meet where members want and need to meet. The committee, hopefully, will talk to its members in its area and determine what events are required and where those events should be in a geographic sense. And quite simply, they can be where they currently are. They can be wherever is convenient. If we develop the online and the virtual technology that's available, and yes, get the sound on it better as well, then, for example, half a dozen people can get themselves together in a suitable location where there is an online facility and have a CPD event or a discussion event or whatever. So the hub is not the meeting point, the hub is the administration centre. The meeting places are where the members need and want to meet. And there's also, you're not restricted, members are not restricted to meetings which are organised by their own hub, by their own hub committee. We're a peripatetic lot in construction. We work all over the place. I think I've said this several times. I've worked in 80 countries around the world. I've needed to be able to turn up to meetings in China, in Malaysia, in South Africa, as well as the UK and Ireland. And members can do that. Hubs can join forces to promote joint events. There's no restriction on that at all, other than a properly put together plan and that being delivered.
Okay, I think the message there really, it's down to imagination really, and we often like being told what to do, sometimes coming with ideas and getting on with it is more difficult, so probably less seeking permission and more just using imagination. Have we got another question, Amy?
Yeah, another question we've received is, what is the timeline to set up these hubs?
Okay, so what is the timeline to set up the hubs? I think you've already covered that a little bit, Amy, but would you just like to just remind people?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so looking at the timings, it's certainly the elections. We've got to get there's elected local committees set up first. So just repeating then what I said, it's September, October for local hub expressions of interest, and that's just for Europe region. Those outside of Europe, it will be within 2017, and we will communicate very early on and ahead, certainly for the local committee, existing committee members, so that they're revised.
Okay, another question. We do.
From Ian Cartwright. What engagement with the international regional hubs, the old regional councils, will the development manager have? The UK cannot be as familiar with local requirements as the representatives of the local region are.
Okay, there you are, Amy. Have you got that one?
Yeah, no problem. In terms of the local staff, they are, and again I repeat, they're focused roles now, so that they can specifically work on the needs, and that certainly is external engagements, working closer with local governments, in turn adding the additional resource at head office as well to deal with that. So they're working together.
Can I just add something there as well? Is that you've also got to remember that those people working regionally and in local governments will still be working, under the overall requirements of what we're trying to achieve as CIOB as a whole. So, for example, I wouldn't want us, for example, to be in a territory where we're actually downgrading what the CIOB qualification is to fit in with a local structure, because at the end of the day, that could be harmful to the institute as a whole. So I think one has to understand that our aims are to go forward and go up rather than go back or fit in with things which don't necessarily work too well. And I would hate, for example, MCRD to be treated like a lesser qualification in some places just because it seems convenient. I think we have to have high aspiration and be able to take the argument that what we have is a high level rather than fit in with sort of structures which aren't perfect, because it may be something that may seem to be convenient and helpful in a place, but on the bigger picture, it's actually not helpful with the issue as a whole.
Achieving that and those aspirations, and this is absolutely right, it's about improving, not reducing. But that still will have to be a joint effort, a partnership between members and the staff. I, over the last few years, have attempted, with less than the success I hoped for, to get into government, for example, on a higher level in a number of areas. The initial introduction is fine. Senior people in the institute, senior members can achieve that. But what we've not had the facility to do in the past is then to follow through on that on a regular, consistent follow-up basis. And one of the clear proposals in this new structure is having people with the skills and the experience and the recognition themselves who can then do that for them, but still engaging with members and have members going along with them. There's no substitute for that.
Yeah, and having the right type of people, people who are professionals at that lobbying activity, and with all the goodwill in the world, members are very good about construction, but sometimes, we need people who are pretty good at dealing with the politics and the, on being able to sort of work on the inside of the structures we're wanting to influence there, so that, we can actually make more progress. Okay, any more questions?
We've got one more question. How will one CIOB affect Novus?
How will one CIOB affect Novus, Amy?
It'll be fantastic for them. I think is a quick answer. It's going to mirror the structure that we have, that we showed you for the local, regional and members forum. They're going to get mandatory representation through all those different levels, which again, we've not had that to this day. There's also a global strategy for Novus that's being updated. And again, the lady at head office that has taken the full-time role, dedicated role for Novus, is working on that with the current Novus chairs. They won't need to elect those roles. So there's the difference. because we believe that they're not necessarily going to be chartered, because they are the younger generation. We hope they're obviously going to aspire to be chartered, but the roles that they play, they're really informal, they're groups rather than committees, and they don't need to be elected.
The working group through on Novus was very, very, very clear. It's an absolute requirement. If this institute is going to grow in terms of its influence, in terms of its membership, in terms of its levels of confidence, we need the fresh input of young people. The cycle of terms that Amy went through related to time serving on committees and so forth is significantly aimed at that constant ability to refresh. And quite simply, the best people to recruit new entrants into this institute are the young people. The best recruiters of young people are young people. With all due respect to people like Chris and myself, we're a long way off the ball in terms of that influence. So, and it's not an option. At every level, there will be a Novus representative, and they won't be at the back of the room either.
Right, well, we've got another question there. Can I just, before we go on to that one, just add a comment on Novus? As I said at the start, one of the objectives in the corporate plan is to lower the average age of members, and to me, that's the Novus community. So I think the Novus community and the people who will be coming into that are actually the heart of what we're trying to do as a CIOB. So I think Novus will have a big part to play in many aspects of how the Institute goes forward, not just in one CIOB. Okay, so a comment to come back from Ian in Australia. Alan has hit the nail on the head. Thank you very much. It's the missing link for us in Australia. And we have another question now. It says, within the UK, would you say that existing committee structure has been unable to offer current relevant CPD to our members? If so, how confident are we that the proposed one survey structure will deliver this better? If I could kick off really with a couple of comments and anecdotes. You know, we do have a place centre in the UK who has the annual fire extinguisher lecture. It's been happening for years and years and years, which suggests that there's a lack of imagination there. Now that all fire extinguishers are red, I think you can go to the internet and pull all that off. And I think there is the issue of relevant CPD. And I think one of the comments I would make is that at the heart of what we're trying to do with One CIOB is enable CPD to be available all across the Institute. So if something is deemed as relevant and useful in one part of the Institute, it should be available and suitable for transmission across the whole Institute. And when I say suitable and available, it means in terms of content, presentation, it comes across as being CIOB standard quality CPD. And if the CPD is not good enough for that, well, it shouldn't be being done in the first place. I think it's as simple as that. But I'll pass that comments over now to Alan and Amy, but that's my own personal observation. And what we want to do is make sure that we have quality assurance processes which make sure that the stuff is good enough to be transmitted, broadcast, and used. So I think one of the challenges for these member committees in the hub areas is coming up with ideas that get through the various quality thresholds.
I think that, first of all, we must understand that a lot of members for many, many years have provided some good quality, relevant, topical CPD talks and so forth. What we've not been very good at is capturing that and making it available other than local. It's been too narrowly focused. What we've also not previously had the facility to do, and this new structure will give us that facility, is to then capture that, improve the quality of it without diminishing the really important member input to it, and then make it available more widely. What it will also enable us to do, with better planning, is avoid situations, yes, like the fire extinguisher lecture, Yes, like the event that I was browbeaten into attending in my region when I was president, a meeting arranged for the 14th of February, would you believe, the evening of the 14th of February. I'm still young enough to know the importance of Valentine's night. In Ashford, in Kent, pouring with rain, 7:30 start. And it was probably a good job I did go, because first of all, I enlarged the audience by 20%. And I heard an interesting talk about the Construction Design and Management Regulations 2003. This event was in 2012, and there had already been 2 revisions to those regulations since 2003. So it's also to get rid of nonsenses like that and have a much more focused, improved program. And time will come. Already, through the CPD portion improvements, already we've got some first-class new CPD modules that are being picked up in other organisations as well.
I think there's also, I think the Institute as well is going to look at mandating some sort of streams of activity for CPD for members, and those people who've been in Europe and who get construction manager will have seen something done earlier in the year that covered off some of the issues around the legal working in the construction industry and really what people should know. It was targeted at sort of board level, it was project manager level, but also at site manager level, because, you know, looking at the breadth of our membership, and I think there'll be more of that coming out that says these are sorts of things we need to do on them. And I can also see, you know, there'll be work CPD coming out that will be made available to cover things like modern slavery, worker welfare, and some work coming out through Members Forum on a toolkit on that. And I think these are going to be big issues that the Institute think are core items that should be there for all CIPD members. 2016 will see a big push around ethics and morality as well. And all these are big challenges for our members wherever they work. And I think the Institute feels that it also needs to take the lead in making sure that, you know, not only are members at local level being asked to do something, but the Institute is also going to be leading with its chin and trying to set an example as well, so that you have stuff available. So I do believe that, you know, it is possible to improve what we're doing, and maybe it's a question of less being done, but what is done is being done exceptionally well and is really relevant, as opposed to habit. And I'm really concerned that a lot takes place because it's habitual as opposed to actually making any real difference. And we'll see that come to fore in the course of the next few years.
We have all linked, because if we're to get the recognition for our members, it has to be based upon a factor called competence. In the past, there's been too much expectation that you demonstrate your competence at 2 particular points. One is when you get your degree, and secondly, when you get your charter membership. Competence has to be maintained relative to what your job is. If we're to get recognition from employers in particular and government for our qualifications, we've got to be able to demonstrate that those members who hold those qualifications, those designations, are competent. And that's really the essential that has to be followed through as CPD program. And that's what the new program will be based around, providing that competence depending on what your role is.
Okay, we've another question now that says, what are the requirements for the establishment of additional hubs? It could also be wrapped in with, you know, what will we do if we decide to change hubs as well? Because, as we say, you know, nothing's forever, and this is going to be quite flexible. So, Amy, thoughts on additional hubs?
Yeah, I think Alan can comment after, actually, but certainly in the hub regulations, we'll have a template in there that will be around sort of presenting a business case to the working group, because the working group is going to continue, not disbanding just because the project is approved, it's still current. So we're certainly in the business case looking at, again, the same criteria as what the working group used to create this model around chartered members, looking at potential for growth, looking at large employers, small employers, looking at universities in the area, and also the government, the nature of the government as well, devolved governments perhaps in the UK. Alan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's important recognising that the hub is an administration point, an administration centre. All members, as they join or attempt to join the Institute, will be allocated to a geographically relevant hub. It's important also to understand if they're moving about working in their career, in their job, their hub allocation is their main point of contact that they register. But they can also register with other hubs as well. But they've got access local to where it is they're working or stationed. But hubs will grow. If the membership, we deliberated at length about should there be a minimum number. No, there can't be. We've got the current structure that we're proposing has got hubs, I think with as few 30 or 40 members, but they're hubs where there is a clear indication that our growth targets can be achieved. And therefore, it's essential that we put in sufficient support to enable that growth to be achieved. But no, there isn't a model. If there's a clear need for additional administration support and that it needs to be more local than the nearest current hub, then it can be introduced. That's really the intent of the flexible model that we put forward.
But I think it's also fair to say that one would have to be very circumspect in this because you create more of these committees. They will take resource away from other activity, and there's always a balance between making sure that we adequate resource what we do, as opposed to just diminishing what's available across the piece, and that's always going to be a fine judgment. And this comes back to what's the case for doing it. So yeah, it's going to be set out in hub regulations, but I think the aim is to be flexible, but at the same time, I don't think we want to really set out with a model which means that we actually shoot ourselves in the foot before we've even started. Okay, well, I think we're all out of questions there. I think it's probably time now to wrap this webinar up. Can I just say that you'll have further opportunities to give your feedback. We'll be doing another survey in October. And if you have any more questions or comments or observations, please don't hesitate to send them in. There is an email address, one at ciob.org.uk. And the questions that we've had today will add to our frequently asked questions, along with the answers. And if you go to the web page, you'll be able to find your questions, some of those answers, and also some of the questions that are raised in other roadshows. So I think it's important that you do that. But if you do have any more questions, for goodness sake, don't just sit there, chucking your thumb, what have you. Do send them in, and we'll do our best to answer them if we can. Alan said, this will change. I'm reminded that 4 days ago was D-Day, and I'm sure that the guys sitting in the landing crafts think, they've got a great battle plan in their mind of what they're going to do. And of course, the minute they hit the beaches, things change, as it did for some of them. And we feel a bit like that at the moment. We think we've got a great plan, and I'm sure when we hit the beaches, things will change. Hopefully not in a big way, but there will be changes. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.